Our client hired us to consult about choosing a TMS. They are just beginning their localization journey, and they are growing rapidly, and they've heard that World Server is the TMS that all of the big enterprises use, but they want us to introduce them to another possibility and see what is best for them. So the client is DoorDash. They've only been around for a few years, but they have been growing very rapidly. They had their initial public offering within the past year, and they are flush with money now, and they want to use that funding to expand globally. So they're actively recruiting a localization manager to build their program, and they're also actively recruiting a Japanese localization specialist because that is their next big target as they expand. So the content that DoorDash needs to localize is primarily mobile apps. They have food delivery, so they have mobile apps for the consumer, for the driver, and also for the merchant, the restaurants. They also have website and marketing material and some support. And then they also have a little bit of internal e-commerce so that drivers and merchants can buy DoorDash branded things on their website. So we talked to all of the major stakeholders to find out what their must-haves and nice-to-haves and pain points were, and come up with a set of features. And we created a weighted scorecard to evaluate the two TMSs based on these features. And we list them all on the scorecard at the end, but we just want to focus on 4 of the key features here. So the first one is scalability. DoorDash has been growing very rapidly, and they want to get into more than just food delivery. They also want to be a competitor with Amazon for local parcel delivery, and they also want to be a provider of an on-demand workforce. So they need something that can scale in lots of different directions quickly and globally. So we compared WorldServer and LanguageCloud for scalability, and there's not a lot of information on the pricing with LanguageCloud. We do know that with WorldServer, while it's very scalable, it's not necessarily rapid to scale it, and it gets more and more expensive as you scale. With LanguageCloud, one of the big selling points is efficiencies gained by the fact that it's an end-to-end all-in-one solution. So lots of different stakeholders can be involved simultaneously, and tasks don't have to be done in such a linear workflow. And so these efficiencies are also an opportunity for agile, rapid scaling and cost savings.
Now let's talk a bit about future adaptability for the company using these products. For one of the most important things with scalability is for the product to be able to provide whatever is needed at any time. We found that WorldServer's web and software integrations are mainly reserved to just SDL products, whereas LanguageCloud offers a much larger selection of web and software integrations that could be very useful in the future if DoorDash is planning on expanding, or they can just cover more bases in this way. Continuing with integration, supported file format is something that for future adaptability could matter a lot. WorldServer does not seem to have as many file formats supported as LanguageCloud does. In particular, LanguageCloud offers a bit more online types of file formats, and in general, it just covers more bases again. So, yeah. Now let's talk a little bit about the customizability of the two. So the thing about customization is it's great when you want it, it's a pain when you have to do it. And what we found is that World Server requires a little bit more effort by software developers to get things up and working. They do have a World Server software developer kit to help software developers move or connect their CMS to World Server. However, this needs to be done by the developers themselves, no help from World Server on that end. So it is more work for DoorDash. If DoorDash considers having an in-house team, World Server is particularly useful for this when it comes to translation. But for a company like DoorDash, they probably won't have constant content to translate, so an in-house team might not be necessary. For Language Cloud, they get rid of the problem of having connectors that need their own development with 50+ automated connectors and also over 300 apps available, so there's less work for the developers. But we do find that World Server offers completely full customization if you're able to do the coding for it.
All right, for our last key feature that we want to cover that we found different enough to compare between the two TMSs, we have ease of use. So ease of use was one of the points that World Server has received a lot of criticism for over the years, as it's very difficult to learn how to navigate the site itself. And it generally visually looks very bland, which makes it hard to distinguish different parts of the site from one another, especially for new users. Language Cloud was built with the intention of standing out from other TMSs such as World Server in this way, by having an easier to understand UI and generally looking more visually appealing to the user. So for comparison, we have two screenshots here from each of the TMSs for their project overview section. So World Server is sorted by whole projects, while Language Cloud is sorted by tasks. And tasks are generally easier to approach and see at a glance what needs to be done at any given time. And visually speaking, it's also just much easier to sort information based on the more dynamic colors that Language Cloud provides, as well as having more space in between the tasks so they don't feel very squished like the World Server does, which makes it a little bit hard to tell one part from another. There's still there's a learning curve still for Language Cloud, and a user would still need to spend some time in order to get used to it. So we didn't give it a perfect score for ease of use, but just looking at these two screenshots, it's definitely a step up from World Server in ease of use. So lastly, here is our final scorecard for each of our TMSs. So as you may notice, there are a number of points that we thought important to keep in mind when choosing a TMS, such as security, for example. We thought that would be a high priority, but because the two TMSs were similar enough, we didn't feel the need to expand too much upon them in this particular presentation. So as you'll probably see, we ended up giving Language Cloud an equal or higher score for almost all of the categories, with the exception of customizability. But as Elena mentioned, we're not sure if DoorDash would need the full customization options for in-house translation, and it might just be easier to get into the customization options that Language Cloud provides because of the automation. So before we get into our final conclusions on which TMS would be better for DoorDash, if it's not made obvious yet, we would like to talk a little bit about the main takeaways that we have about the more objective differences between the TMSs overall. So World Server's been around for a very long time, and because of that, it's much better documented compared to Language Cloud. However, it does require more experience with localization and the actual software to effectively use, and you really just need a good understanding of its inner workings to make the most of World Server. On the other hand, Language Cloud has more support for file types and integrations, but because it is newer, it does have less documentation. So for example, trying to find support or looking up questions online for general information might prove a little bit more difficult for a user. With that being said, we definitely to the conclusion that Language Cloud would be preferable for a company such as DoorDash, as they are new to localization. One of the biggest concerns for Language Cloud is that older companies who have used World Server for years now find it too expensive to migrate to a new TMS. But for a new company that's looking to get into their first TMS, that wouldn't actually be an issue at all. In addition, we found that Language Cloud was just superior in most aspects, especially ones that would be most appealing to a company that's new to localization, such as having better ease of use, having more supported file types, and generally being more adaptable for the future. And that's all for our presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.